History is one of the most boring topics as it is often associated with memorizing events and becoming familiar with chronological events. However, if we want to have a sensible idea about art, it is just appropriate to look into the lens of the past. How can we better understand art if we do not have any idea how it has been influenced by artists who strove to evolve the meaning and expression of art? The foundation of art history can be traced back tens of thousands of years to when ancient civilization used available techniques and media to depict culturally significant subject matter. Since these early examples, a plethora of art movements have followed, each bearing their own distinct styles and characteristics that reflect the political and social influences of the period from which they emerge. Influential genres of art from the Renaissance to the rise of modernism have undoubtedly made their mark on history, with many artists today like Banksy, Kerry James Marshall, Michaelan Thomas, and Hindy Wiley consistently infusing art historical references into contemporary arts. Understanding the historical context and significance of each period and movement is critical for collectors and art enthusiasts. Prehistoric art. The origins of art history can be traced back to the prehistoric era. Before written records were kept, the earliest artifacts come from the Paleolithic era, or the Old Stone Age, in the form of rock carvings, engravings, pictorial imagery, sculptures, and stone arrangements. Art from this period relied on the use of natural pigments and stone carvings to create representations of objects, animals, and rituals that governed a civilization's existence. One of the most famous examples is that the Paleolithic cave paintings found in the complex caves of Lascaux in France. Though discovered in 1940, they are estimated to be up to 20,000 years old and depict large animals and vegetation from the area. Ancient art. Ancient art was produced by advanced civilizations, which in this case refers to those with an established written language. These civilizations included Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, and those of the Americas. The medium of a work of art from this period varies depending on the civilization that produced it, but most art serves similar purposes: to tell stories, decorate utilitarian objects like bowls and weapons, display religious and symbolic imagery, and demonstrate social status. Many works depict stories of rulers, gods, and goddesses. One of the most famous works from ancient Mesopotamia is the Code of Hammurabi. Created around 1792 BC, the piece bears a Babylonian set of laws carved in stone, adorned by an image of King Hammurabi, the sixth king of Babylonia, and the Mesopotamian god Shabbos. Medieval art. The Middle Ages, often referred to as the Dark Ages, marked a period of economic and cultural deterioration following the fall of the Roman Empire in 476 AD. Much of the artwork produced in the early years of the period reflects that darkness, characterized by grotesque imagery and brutal scenery. Art produced during this time was centered around the church. As the first millennium passed, more sophisticated and elaborately decorated churches emerged. Windows and silhouettes were adorned with biblical subjects and scenes from classical mythology. This period was also responsible for the emergence of the illuminated manuscript and Gothic architecture style. Definitive examples of influential art from this period include the catacombs in Rome, Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, the Lindisfarne Gospels, one of the best-known examples of the illuminated manuscript, and Notre Dame, a Parisian cathedral and prominent example of Gothic architecture. Renaissance art. This style of painting, sculpture, and decorative art was characterized by a focus on nature and individualism, the thought of man as independent and self-reliant, though these ideals were present in the late medieval period. They flourished in the 15th and 16th centuries, paralleling social and economic changes like secularization. The Renaissance reached its height in Florence, Italy, due in large part of the Medici, a wealthy merchant family who adamantly supported the arts and humanism, a variety of beliefs and philosophies that places emphasis on the human realm. Italian designer Filippo Brunelleschi and sculptor Donatello were key innovators during this period. The High Renaissance, which lasted from 1490 to 1527, produced influential artists such as Da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael, each of whom brought creative power and spearheaded ideals of emotional expression. Artwork throughout the Renaissance was characterized by realism, attention to detail, and precise study of human anatomy. Artists used linear perspective and created depth through intense lighting and shading. Art began to change stylistically shortly after the High Renaissance, when clashes between the Christian faith and humanism gave way to Mannerism. Mannerism. Mannerist artists emerged from the ideals of Michelangelo, Raphael, and other late Renaissance artists, but their focus on style and technique outweighed the meaning of the subject matter. Often, figures had graceful, elongated limbs, small heads, stylized features, and exaggerated details. This yielded more complex, stylized compositions. Some of the most celebrated Mannerist artists include Giorgio Vasari, Francesco Salvaccia, Domenico Beccafumi, and Bronzini, who is widely considered to be the most important Mannerist painter in Florence during this time. The Baroque period. The Baroque period that followed Mannerism yielded ornate, over-the-top visual arts and architecture. It was characterized by grandeur and richness, punctuated by an interest in broadening human intellect and global discovery. Baroque artists were stylistically complex. Baroque paintings were characterized by drama, as seen in the iconic works of Italian painter Caravaggio and Dutch painter Rembrandt. Painters used an intense contrast between light and dark, and had energetic compositions matched by rich color palettes. The Rococo period. The Rococo originated in Paris, encompassing decorative art, painting, architecture, and sculpture. Rococo is characterized by lightness and elegance, focusing on the use of natural forms, a symmetrical design, and subtle colors. Painters like Anton Francis used light-hearted treatments, rich brushwork, and fresh colors. The Rococo style also easily translated to silver, porcelain, and French furniture. Many chairs and armors featured carving forms, floral designs, and an expensive use of gilt. As its name suggests, the neoclassical period drew upon elements from classical antiquity. This translated to a renewed interest in classical ideals of harmony, simplicity, and proportion. Neoclassical artists were influenced by classical elements, in particular, a focus on idealism. Inevitably, they also included modern, historically relevant depictions in their works. For example, Italian sculptor Antonio Canova drew upon the classical elements in his marble sculptures, but avoided the cold artificiality that was represented in many of these early creations. The Romanticism period. Romanticism embodies a broad range of disciplines, from painting to music to literature. The ideals present in each of these art forms reject order, harmony, and rationality, which were embraced in both classical art and neoclassicalism. Instead, Romantic artists emphasized the individual and imagination. Another defining Romantic ideal was an appreciation for nature, with many turning to plein air painting, which brought artists out of dark interiors and enabled them to paint outside. Artists also focused on passion, emotion, and sensation over intellect and reason. Prominent Romantic painters include Henri Fuseli, who created strange, macabre paintings that explored the dark recesses of human psychology, and William Blake, whose mysterious poems and images convey the mystical visions and his disappointment in societal constraints. Realism. Arguably, the first modern art movement began in France in the 1840s. Realism was a result of multiple events: the anti-Romantic movement in Germany, the rise of journalism, and the advent of photography. Each inspired new interest in accurately capturing everyday life. This attention to accuracy is evident in art produced during movement, which featured detailed, lifelike depictions of subject matter. One of the most influential leaders of the realist movement is Gustave Courbet, a French artist committed to painting only what he could physically see.